Good evening and welcome to the Pullman City Council meeting for this Tuesday, January 29th. Indeed, it's your turn to take roll.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor Johnson.
Present.
Councilmember Chapman.
Here.
Councilmember McCall.
Here.
Councilmember Weller. Councilmember Parks.
Here.
Councilmember Wright.
Here.
Councilmember Records.
Here.
Councilmember Sorensen.
Here.
And Nathan Weller notified us he'll be a little late coming to the meeting, so he should be here in probably the next half hour or so. With that, we have announcements to make tonight, and one of them is really rather important for our community. It's a combination between the Community Action Center, Whitman County, and Neal Public Library. There's going to be some meetings coming up in February on the Tuesdays. That's February 5th, 12th, 19th, and 26th between 1 and 5 p.m. on energy or heating assistance. So if you should happen to find yourself in a case where you need to have assistance to pay for heating or electricity, or you have some other issues, Community Action Center does a lot of good things in Whitman County. They can also do winterizing of homes, do all kinds of things like that. If you go on the website, you'll find out what the requirements are for eligibility. But again, it takes place in February on Tuesdays between 1 and 5. It's a combination with Neal Public Library hosting the Community Action Center in Palouse. Plan ahead for the Palouse Habitat for Humanity Annual Casual Barbecue Dinner, Bluegrass, and Auction Fundraiser. Beans and James will be on Saturday, April 20th at the SCL Event Center. Buy a ticket or sponsor a table, donate an auction item. You can all go to PalouseHabitat.org. I'd also like to mention that the Pullman Farmers Market presents the Pullman Winter Market. Next time will be February 16th. It's always every month on the third Saturday. It'll be at the Brailsford WSU Visitor Center, and it goes between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. again. February 16th is the next one. Adam, you were going to give us an update on what we found out so far as District Court is concerned and some updates, so let's go for that next.
So we're planning on receiving a technical memo from Design West regarding the future City Hall location and the Washington State Court's standards for security. Kevin Gardis looked into this building as far as operation and maintenance. It's around $50,000 a year. That's excluding a couple items, if I'm not correct. And then the roof replacement's still about $260,000 or so for this facility currently. Some of the security standards that likely will have some big costs that go along with them. The recommendations for the standards are, first of all, don't have a building that is multiple use. That's their first thing that they start off with. Guards are recommended. Weapon screening is something that they have in there. I shouldn't use the word recommended. I think it's more strong language than that, but as it would be the owner of the building who would be probably liable in those cases. I think the verbiage that they use is stronger than you should have those things. Bullet resistant materials, including glass and I think walls. Secured parking for specific individuals, and a few other items that'll be in a more well put together memo, and that should be at your next council meeting on the 26th of February. So I just wanted to give you an update that we're still working on working with the county on what language should be updated in the two contracts that exist. Commissioner Swanek has tasked Gary Petrovich to work with the city. So myself and Laura will be working to make sure that we get the most accurate data that we can to all of you council members, and then we can decide what the next steps are going forward. That's my brief update.
Okay.
Yeah, I've just got a few questions. Kevin, maybe that $50,000 per year. Give me the rundown. What does that?
That's just minimum.
So the way we figure out government buildings rates is we base it on square footage of City Hall use. So finance, admin, legislative, court is so many square feet divided by the overall square feet, the cost to heat this building, maintain it. So 50,000 is an easy calculation because it's just a straight square footage based on what it cost to build the City Hall last year. But if district court is the only thing that's in this building, then things like snow removal that are shared by multiple departments would all be absorbed by the district court. So I think that's a low number. That's my sense.
Yeah,
So-
snow management was the first thing that jumped into my mind, of course. And what about data?
Data?
Yeah, phone lines, data.
They have one secured line that Whitman County pays for, but we maintain some of the other.
I think they share some in some of our phone system currently, but as we're looking to go to a different system, they're looking to separate and go onto their own phone system. And I think they use some of our public Wi-Fi. I don't believe they're attached to our network, and they might have their own separate line for data.
We do have a program in CIP replacing the roof too in the next few years. The elevator, that would all be maintained by whoever occupies the building. If it's only district court, then all those costs then, go to that. We just got notified today that L&I's looking at changing the elevator rules to have to retrofit older elevators. And
Yeah.
so,
Yeah,
in the
we
next
talked to
couple
Joe
years,
about that,
so,
yeah.
so.
Yeah.
A question for you and a question for you. If we maintain this building and the district court stays here, is there any part of the police operations move here?
That's probably a better
Or that's
question
also
for.
you?
Well, actually, it would be a question for council whether or not we want to keep using this for city purposes, if we want to look at the potential of leasing it out or see what the open market might look like for a facility like this. So that's still to be determined.
And my second question is, with the costs involved in the security measures and making the space usable for the district court at the new city hall, what part does the county have in helping with the cost of that?
Again, that's a great discussion. I think we need to come back with what those costs actually look like, and then staff would need some direction on what should be included in a future agreement with the county to include upfitting for some of those costs or personnel
So it wouldn't
costs.
be all on us, on the city?
Again,
We're not, okay.
yeah, that would be a.
Right now, we're basically covering
Everything.
everything.
Correct.
I think both sides agree, the county and the city agree, that there needs to be changes to the contracts that exist currently. I did provide the county with some of the items that I had looked for when I did court contracting with my previous position. So some of the things that you might look to for justifying costs and things that they might be able to measure are some things that I provided to them. So we'll see what they do with that information.
Okay. Any other questions on that? Next comes our presentation of the Washington Standard Ratings Bureau. We have our Chief Mike Heston with us here and our training officer Ray Lamoureux. So again, it's a beautiful report here that you gave us tonight.
Thank you, Mayor. It's our pleasure to present our survey and rating report that we did last fall. So I just want to say a few things about it before I turn Ray loose on this. So the last 5 years, we made quite a bit of improvements as a department, and we couldn't have done it without some help with some other folks like M&O, ERD, WITCOM, and WSU, because they had to provide a lot of information for us to make this thing work. And also thanks to the support of the council for supporting us and for getting grants and those kinds of things, increasing the services and support for vehicles. All those things help in the big picture overall. So Ray was assigned this project, so he did a great job with putting it together. And then Ray and I both attended survey and rating meetings that they have every few months up in Cheney. So we stay on top of what the latest and greatest are. And we can also make changes in it as well. So things that would benefit our department, we can make those changes and request those things, and at the state fire chiefs conference they make those changes over time. So there are some things that we can do as a department ourselves that benefit us. Like, for example, we're looking for the physical fitness part of it. We think that we should get credit for that as part of the training because it's a mandatory thing. It's also in the firefighter essentials manual. So little things like that they're working towards. We're kind of ahead of the game on that one, but at some point that will be in there. We will get credit for those kinds of things. So we appreciate that support. So with that, I'll turn it over to Ray, and then I'll stick around and we'll answer questions after that. So.
Okay.
Thank you, Chief. Mr. Mayor and Council, thanks for having us. So The history behind WSRB is that it's really the only entity within Washington State that is giving the Office of the Insurance Commissioner insurance ratings for fire departments on behalf of subscribers. So in short, the fire department's WSRB comes in and tells us what our ability is to put fires out. We kind of know what our abilities are, but they actually assign us a grade based on certain criteria that they have come up with. So the grading weight, we're graded in 4 areas: our water supply, fire department, fire safety control, and emergency communications. The 3 out of the 4 areas we actually have direct control over as a city. We got water supply, fire department, and fire safety control, which that fire safety control is encompasses fire prevention, fire inspections, that kind of stuff. And then the other 9% is emergency communications, or WITCOM. And I'm sure we have a little bit of weight there, but obviously they have their own board and their own structure that makes the decisions up there. And so we may be able to give input to them, but we really don't have a whole lot of control. But they're not a big portion of what we get graded on. We don't get any divergent points, which is good. And the way divergent points work is if the fire department's capability to put out fire was a 3 and our water system was a 5, so if we had a lot of staffing and a lot of, or more stations, but our water system was lacking, they would assign divergent points, which would go against us. But because the fire department capability and our water capability are pretty much the same, we don't get any divergent points there. So in 2013, when we got graded, we went from a 4 to a 5. Back then, they were only doing it every 10 years. So in 2003, when we were last graded, before that, we didn't have WSU. And so we were only graded on City of Pullman proper. And obviously in 2005, we took over campus. And then in 2013, when we were re-rated, that included campus. And there's a lot of square footage. There's a lot of high dollar occupancies up there, and their water system really isn't what our water system here is in the city. So we do have some issues there when we start talking about fire flow, and we'll get into that. So overall, you can see in most categories, we went the right way. In water supply, we could call it a wash, but we did decrease 6 points there. And before we get going too much further, the scores here are like golf. So the less the score, the better. You don't want deficiency points. Fire department, we made a big jump there. A lot of that was due to staffing and training. And fire safety control, we went down a little bit there, but we actually went up at the emergency communications part. And a lot of that is due to the building and some of the systems that WITCOM has. And the fact that WITCOM dispatches for such a large area, they don't just grade us on what Pullman's capability is. So even though we have a couple repeaters and we maintain our equipment, Asotin County or over in Idaho, maybe they don't keep their equipment up, or it's not as up to date as what ours is. We get dinged for that, and there's really no way around it. It is something that Chief and I brought up at one of our WSRB meetings, and at this point they really don't have a good fix for it that's going to be fair for everybody. So WSRB is looking at it, but we're kind of an anomaly when they look at Washington State, in that most dispatch centers only dispatch for one county, and they're not dispatching for such a large area like what we have here. So water supply, arrangement, operation, and maintenance. That was really the only place that that we went backwards. Adequacy of water supply, I'll give you, that's really a wash. It's really dependent upon what occupancies that they pulled as to whether or not that score is going to go up and down. If they pull a bunch of buildings that are sprinklered, then our fire flow goes down and the adequacy of water is there. Versus if they, like this year, I think half of the 30 buildings that they pulled were non-sprinklered. And of course they're commercial, so there's some square footage to them as well. So that's where that goes in. But arrangement and operation, where we got hit here, and we had a nice conversation with Kevin and his crew. I think WSRB has on record 1,600 water valves within the city of Pullman. And they're supposed to get exercised on different intervals based on their size. So if they're 10 inches or greater, then we should be exercising them every 6 months. And if they're smaller than 10 inches, then we can do it once a year. The problem with that, and Kevin brought up a great point, is you start exercising these valves and now they break because we're out exercising them. That's a huge cost incurred to the city to have to dig these things up and fix them. So when you start looking at risk versus benefit, the water's still flowing through the valves right now, and unless we close them, we're not going to have an issue. So we agreed with Kevin that that's probably not an area that we're going to focus on to try and decrease any points here, because I think there's going to be more money involved in the long run than benefit in decreasing our points there. Fire department, this is our biggest area. This gets split up into 17 different areas. And you can see we really did a good job of going the right way in all of these areas. The biggest net point gains were in training, and it had nothing to do with me coming on. It really went back to our crews doing a much better job of documenting the training that they were having. When I looked at the 2013 report, they only got 20% credit for their training. And when I first came on, I asked Chief and I asked Chief Scharnhorst, you guys got to train more than this. And they were like, yeah, the guys are out training all the time. Well, what we found was the system we were using was so cumbersome that the guys weren't really wanting to get in there. It was hard for them to get in there and really document everything that they were doing. So we streamlined that. We went to a different program, and now we're capturing a lot more hours. And along with the grant that we're implementing right now with AFG and bringing everybody up to Firefighter 2, I would anticipate that the next time we get graded, we'll probably get 100% for that category. Pumper capacity is another one. We went in the right direction with upgrading the last two pumpers with the new Spartans. This ties into that water capacity issue or adequate water supply and what buildings that they grab for us. If they grab a bunch of sprinkler buildings, that cuts the amount of fire flow in half for that building versus non-sprinklered. So right now, they're saying we should be at about 4,500 GPM for fire flow, and we just don't have the apparatus to meet that 4,500 when you add up all of our apparatus. But again, that's a big ticket item, and we're fighting storage right now anyways with where to put stuff, and so even if we had the ability to add apparatus, it would be very tough to do that.
And considering the engines are $650,000
Yes.
apiece.
Yeah, it makes it really hard to get there. And we could hold on, the H&W is still a great rig, and if we were, in the next couple of years, we were going to replace another rig, we could hold on to that. We'd still get credit for it, but we do more damage to it with it sitting outside, especially during the winters. So unless we had a place where we could store stuff, we're really doing the apparatus a disservice, and it's not going to have any value when we do go to get rid of it. Maintenance and operation and condition of apparatus. This is another area that we did very well in. Thanks to ERD, Chris and his crew down there stepping up and really putting in the time it took to go get their EVT certifications. And I met with them again for this year, and they're excited about going and getting more. So I anticipate that that's going to be another area of great gains when we get re-rated here in 2023. Fire operations and special protection, we get a 0 in because we don't need a boat. Right now, that is the only specialty classification in that area. They are, as of 2019, we added wildland for the Eastern Washington departments, but with our Type 6 rig that we have now and the Type 3 rig that is coming, we're going to more than meet that standard. So again, we should stay at that 0. Fire safety controls. The big one here is fire code enforcement, and this is our occupancy inspections. I believe there was in your report a grading scale, and I may not have put it in there. But it was pretty convoluted. If you got so many points for how often you inspected commercial occupancies, who inspected them, whether they were certified or not certified. We finally, in our meeting, simplified it. It's either going to be annually or none at all, and then certified or non-certified. The problem we have is we got 980 some odd commercial occupancies in Pullman to inspect. Obviously, Chris and Tony are only 2 people, so we augment that with our line staff, and it's twofold there. We need them to actually get out and touch these occupancies once a year, but there's an intrinsic value in getting the career staff out into these buildings and walking through them so that they stay familiar. So if we ever have an incident there, they're familiar with where the hazards are at and how to get around the building. So we're going to make some good strides here. Chris has got a great plan that he's going to be working on and hopefully implementing in the next year to year and a half. So in this area, that's really the biggest gain that we're going to get. We're not going to gain a whole lot anywhere else. Pub Ed, Tony's going to go get certified. That'll be a good points gain. And then he's also adding a couple of programs, which is we were short on our program numbers. So overall, I think we can really get down to a solid 4 and not have to be at that top end where we worry about slipping back into a 5, both with the staffing that council has given us this year and next year, and then, of course, getting better with our pre-fires and with our inspections. So I think we can easily get to a solid 4 where we're not worrying about it. Getting to a 3, that's more of a long-term goal for later down the road. And this is where we look at for emergency communications. And you can see we pretty much went backwards in every category here. The big one, just like law enforcement, fire department, dispatch, they're understaffed. And that's where we get a lot of deficiency points with their staffing. So there's the summary. The points scored, that's our deficiency points that we got for each one. You can see what the maximum deficiency points. So if you got rated a 10, you would hit the max on everything, and then that percentage of credit for each one, and then the rating for percentage. So water supply is 35% of the score. Fire department's 40. Emergency communications is 9%, and then fire safety control is 16. So you add all that up and use their secret formula that they won't tell us exactly how to figure it out, and it puts us at 3.82. So 3.82, as you can see, puts us just under the 5 mark, which is not, it's great that we're a 4, but we would like to be a comfortable 4. So that we don't have to worry about sliding back up. And Councilman Sorensen would understand this a lot better than me, but with my research with the insurance industry, we could put a dollar figure on a house, but it's really going to be minuscule, where making a fire department better or worse with WSRB is really going to be in the commercial property, where you're insuring a lot of dollars. That's where you're going to see the biggest gains. Anybody have any questions?
I would like to, well, excuse me, I really appreciate the fact that you did a comparison between the state of Washington and Idaho
just gonna
on
say
page
that,
8.
yeah.
And I would really appreciate if you would explain that to
Sure.
the audience, because that's one thing that we hear as representatives of the city. Why aren't we, when they have volunteers and we have paid, we have a huge expense for fire and less than over there. So would you please explain that to the
Absolutely.
public?
So there's 3 states within the entire country, or 4 states, that have their own rating bureau. So Washington happens to be one of them. Everybody else uses ISO, the Insurance Service, I don't even remember what it is now. Insurance Service Office, thank you. And they use a lot of the same criteria, but there is definitely some differences, and how they do their calculations for staffing and other areas really makes it disparaging between the two. So when we hear it from Chief Nickerson, hey, we're a Class 3 fire department over here in Moscow, and I'm sure Mayor Johnson hears it from his counterparts over there. They're really comparing apples and oranges. There's really too many differences between ISO and WSRB to say that you can look at a Class 3 fire department and a Class 4 here and say that they're the same, because they're really not. There's just way too many differences, especially in the area of occupancy inspections. For them, they've been on the scale that we're going to now, which is annual inspections by either certified or non-certified, and they're very liberal on how they apply that, versus ours. To get a perfect score or 0 deficiency points within our inspection program, we would have to inspect every business in the city biannually, and every H-class occupancy, so an H1 through H4, bi-monthly. The city of Seattle, with their huge fire department or fire prevention division, can't even do that. So it really, the grading scale really set departments up for failure. And of course, they've been using the watered down scale for a while. We've kind of went to a similar model, but WSRB is still going to hold the department's feet to the fire when it comes to making sure that the percentage of score that we get for a certified fire inspector versus non-certified is still going to be a lot tougher than what ISO is going to see. So those are the big differences. And yeah, they do or get a better rating with volunteers, but again, it goes back to how they grade them in our staffing. For us, we can get a lot of credit for our reserves as long as they're in the station. So that's another difference, is they kind of get graded on just sheer numbers, versus for us, we only get credit if the firefighter is in the station. If they're responding from home, they give us credit. 3 volunteers make up 1 career if they're responding from home, versus if we had a place for them to stay in the stations. If they're at the stations, it's 1 for 1. They don't differentiate between career and volunteer because they're all firefighters. So right now we're implementing the new reserve program. We're going to hopefully have folks in there 12 hours every night to bring Station 2 up to 4 and 4 all the time until our new staffing gets on next year, which when they go to regrade us, we get to count all that. As long as we can show that we're staffing the station, they give us credit for that 1-to-1. We don't, just because they're a reserve, does not decrease their value within the grading.
Al, you had a question?
I've got a few things here, but I wanted to say first off, this is an excellent report. Ann probably works with this as much as I do, but the Washington State Surveying and Rating Bureau does an excellent job. They do a lot of work
Yes, they do.
around. And just to reiterate, the state of Washington Insurance Commissioner and Washington State Surveying and Rating Bureau are the 2 toughest in the nation. So it's difficult For us to be at a 4 is really good, and you cannot compare, it might be apples to watermelons in Mossville. But, you know, so we can't let them give us any harassment about that. But I have a few points in here. I've read through this whole thing, and this is what I do, so. Just a couple of quick questions in regards to your golf score. No, the Whitcomb, and I understand, you know, we cover a big area and that type of thing, and that's where our major deficiency is, but it's only 9% of the grading.
Right.
But maybe, when did we go to Whitcomb? How long has it been since we didn't have our own, or did we ever have our own, or what?
Yes, we had our own at one time,
So-
many years ago.
Okay.
Chief would probably know better history on that than I would.
Yeah, we used to have our own dispatch, but if we'd have graded them then compared to now, we'd have got killed. Because the backup, there was no backup, there was no redundancy, there was no security. There wasn't even any windows in the building at the beginning.
Yeah.
Because they were in that old brick building up there, so. And we've met with all the folks after we got done with this, and we're looking at what kind of low-hanging fruit can we do. So things like that security door that they're doing, you know, these things help. Redundancies and backups in their systems help. So they are working towards some of these things as much as they can, but you're right, it's only 9%, but we're looking at the low-hanging fruit that we can get with that.
And there would never be any reason or need for us to leave Whitcomb and go to our own?
No, I think that would be a big step backwards for us.
Okay.
Whitcomb is one of the
I'm just
leading
kind of putting this
dispatching.
out for people to
Especially with the
hear.
technology that they've upgraded to.
And the cost sharing arrangement that we have.
It's,
Yep.
Yeah, they are a leader in the industry of what they're doing. They do have some deficiencies, they could use more bodies and different things, but they're pretty sharp on what they do.
plus they have a new leader in charge of Whitcomb now. They're making some good positive changes.
Yeah, the two big things there are staffing, of course, and then their building. Even though it's a somewhat newer building, it doesn't have the security that WSRB requires. It doesn't have bulletproof glass. They did put in the big brick wall and door, but they still have a glass man door on the main area, which is not bulletproof. So there's really some security issues, which they get major deficiency points with their building. So those are the two big areas.
Okay, the next thing I had here, and I'm glad you brought it up and expanded a little bit, was on the exercising of valves. And I had some notes here to talk about that a little bit. And when you say exercising of valves, are we talking flow testing? You know, what does it mean, exercising valves?
The way WSRB explained it to me was literally going from full on to full off was what they're looking for to exercise valves. That's,
Did we used to do that, Kevin, or have we done that much?
I don't know if we used to do it. We haven't done it much recently. We have a ton of valves in the system, primarily for isolation. So if there's a leak, we basically can close 2 valves and isolate the section that's got the broken pipe in it.
We definitely had some experience on Grand Avenue with those valves.
We certainly put in a lot more valves these days than we used to, just for isolation purposes, but it would be a pretty monumental effort to go out and exercise all those, and then we'd be dealing with some pipes that are probably close to 100 years old that we would have issues with trying to do that.
At one time, WSU used to flow test their hydrants
Yep.
every summer. I don't know if they're still doing that or not. Do you have any idea?
I don't know if they're
'Cause they had a
flow testing.
fire service. Do they still have their fire service department out there?
They have,
One
Darren Jones is the only fire protection person up there.
who does inspections. just
Yeah,
WSU.
and it's all he can do to keep up with building inspections up there.
And then also facilities takes care of the smoke detectors.
And that's what I'm
Correct.
talking about, though, is facilities did smoke detectors, hydrant flow testing, because I did that back when I was in college there in that department too. So.
We actually go up and maintenance the hydrants as
do?
part, yes. Since
Okay.
we've taken over campus, we go up and do, just like our hydrant maintenance in the city, we do the campus ones as well. But their facility staff does do all of the alarm testing, smoke detector replacement, all of that stuff is done by FAC Ops.
Okay, so, go ahead, Kevin.
So we don't do as much flow testing in our water system, the city system, as we used to. And the city and WSU have separate water systems. But we have a water hydraulic model. It's computerized. And so every 6 years when we update our water plan, we run that model, we add the new pipes to the system with new development, and when we go in and we enlarge a pipe to get better fire flow in the system, those are all put in every 6 years when we do our model run. And then we go out and we actually flow test fire hydrants to calibrate it, and we compare it to the model results. And so we do that with probably anywhere from 12 to 24 fire hydrants, and we pretty much come in, within the accuracy of plus or minus 5 or 10%. So
And when we do that, do we notify the residents in the neighborhood it's
we
going to
usually
happen?
do it very
Because
early in the
The
morning,
main complaint is
before
that it
people
changes,
get up.
you got dirty water. It washes, mixes up the sediment in the pipes, so we do that.
Yeah,
So I have one concern, and that is you say if we're going to test this stuff, we could break them. Well, the comment I wrote down here is I'd rather break it testing than break it in an emergency situation. Well, are we really breaking them, testing them?
I honestly haven't really gotten a good answer from WSRB as to why this is such a big deal to them, because like Kevin said, these valves are really for isolation. And I can't see with the added pumps that we can turn on to get increased fire flow, that why we would shunt or shut off a portion of the city to get increased fire flow with the pumps that we have. So our next meeting is in May, and it's on my list of questions to ask.
Excellent, good. Okay, and then there was a comment in here about maybe turning over some of the maintenance on hydrants over to the reserves. I think that's maybe a great idea.
And this was the second year that we did that.
Yeah.
Okay,
And
Painted the hydrants, and they've done some other things with them, too.
we didn't paint them, but we did invest in, because WSRB gave us the option to paint or to put reflective stickers on them. And that is to show at a glance what the hydrant can flow. So I believe it's NFPA 72 or 71 is the standard for what a hydrant, based on its flow, what color it needs to be identified as. And so most of ours in the city are blue top, which is the best you can get. We got a few up on campus that are a little bit lacking, but it's the higher hydrants up on the hills. So you're not getting the head pressure that we get here in the city with our tanks being up on a hill. And then you come down to Grand Avenue, you get great flow and great pressure.
I think there's a misconception. Everybody goes to me, oh, you got great water pressure. I have the opposite. I'm at the top of the hill, not the bottom. It's the other way around. Another question here, you talk on page 18 about the enforcement to do the 965 occupancy inspections. How many of those 965 are WSU properties?
Oh, I do not have that number.
Half?
They
75%?
probably, no, it's not even half. They probably have a couple hundred, maybe 300 occupancies. Let's say a third.
Okay.
But Darren,
There's about 250 fire alarms, so
yeah,
a couple hundred, 200 to 300.
yeah, so about a third,
About a third.
roughly.
Okay. Good. The other comment that I just want to make is I think it's great that we got back under the 5 and down to a 4. I do think it would be really difficult for us to get down to a 3 without some major expense. What I'd really like to see us focus on is, like you already said, find those things that we can do that can help us get down to 3.5 instead of 3.8 so that we have a comfortable number in there for when it kind of comes around. And I think we can do that with a lot of the things that you found
Yep, I agree.
in the report. And working with Washington State Survey and Rating Bureau, I think will be
Yeah,
helpful.
the two big issues that are going to keep us from a 3 are staffing and stations. Obviously, we're moving towards the station route with the already having in the bond the money for property for Station 3. But at some point, we're going to have to staff it to make it worthwhile. And the bummer part when it comes to staffing is they grade us against 1710. And 1710 was really set up for LA, Seattle, New York, where they're running 4-man engine companies, 6-man ladder companies, 4-man squads. We're never going to get there. But that's the standard that we're being held against. So if we have 3 engines in the system, engine 31, 32, and 33, they expect us to have 12 firefighters every day on those 3 engines. And then the PL, they expect us to have 6 on there every day. And we don't have the call volume to support that, nor do we have the tax base to support that. So I agree with Councilman Sorensen that let's hit the low-hanging fruit. Let's get into that solid 4 area, and a 3 can be a future dream if we ever get there.
Yeah, well, excellent job on all of this. I just want to, this is good news, and it's good for the community.
Other questions or comments? I had one other comment. We take the extra effort to send our paramedics and our firefighters to the state academy, which costs us money.
Yep.
And other departments, they just do their own training within their own group. Does that help us in points?
It does in the
academy?
It does in the fact that unless the department, if they're doing their own training, unless they're bringing in the IFSAC test teams to test them and get them their IFSAC certifications, you can train in-house all you want and it's not going to do you any good. Versus us sending our folks to the state academy, they come out with Firefighter 1 Hazmat Ops and Firefighter 2, which takes our training liabilities down from 20 hours a month down to 10 hours a month. So, the city's not going to get any smaller. We're going to continue to grow. Our call volume is going to continue to increase. The line staff's going to be busier. The training requirements aren't getting any lighter. And so that day fills up really quick. So having the ability to, on some of those days where you're just busy and you don't get to train, it's not a big impact to the department or to our score, because instead of having 20 hours a month, we're only having 10 because we're getting our guys the certifications.
Now, a couple of more questions, and maybe the chief wants to answer this one here. You're going for accreditation, which is it's a major thing. That should help in terms of ratings too, perhaps. And the other thing is that the officers, all the chiefs are making efforts to go on ambulance calls or medic calls for supervision. How does that factor into this?
So EMS does not factor into WSRB at all. All they care about is fire. But we did gain some points in that area. At the previous rating in 2013, there wasn't a duty schedule set up for the chief officers. And so we scored very, very poorly in that arena. When Gabe was here, Chief brought up hey, let's do a 1 week on, 2 week off rotation. And so we were able to show WSRB when they came in that we had been doing this rotation for a couple of years. And so we ended up taking our score. I think we were only getting 15% in that category to 100%. We get no deficiency points in the chief officer area anymore because of that rotation.
Excellent. Any further? Again, thank you so much for all your hard work to get the better ratings, and it's good to hear you got a good action plan too. Thank you, Chief Heston and Lamoureux. We appreciate your leadership. Item D is the election of Mayor Pro Tem and alternate Mayor Pro Tem. You have that in your packet. You have who has been Mayor Pro Tem before and who's the alternate. In many cases, you just move people up, and we also do not have Dan or Brandon in that rotation.
17. What were the names in 17? We skipped 17 on our list.
17 was Pat and Ann.
Yeah.
Okay.
And what's Pat? Yeah, that's right.
Okay. So we wait for the council to make recommendations.
Well, I would suggest that Ann Parks move up to Mayor Pro Tem.
That's a motion?
Yes, sir.
Motion and a second, okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. And now we'll find out who's the alternate.
Who wants to do it?
I try and stay in job well, as much as I can, so you
Okay,
don't have to do a
I'll
lot of
narrow
extra
this
work.
down, either Dan or Brandon.
Yeah,
I'd do it.
Okay,
okay, Dan. Okay, you've made the motion for Dan? Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second. Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Just like that, we make decisions.
not
I'm
me.
gonna say rock, paper, scissors.
Ann made the motion,
Ann made the motion. Okay,
and
thank
I
you.
believe
I think Eileen was,
Eileen made the second.
I made it third.
All right,
There you go.
just like that, we've taken care of some more business. Now comes our consent agenda. These items are considered routine in nature. Council's had a chance to study these items ahead of time. And do I hear a motion to read by title only?
So moved.
Second.
Move second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed with that? Laura McAloon, our city attorney.
Thank you, Mayor. Your consent agenda consists of a motion to dispense with the reading of the minutes of the regular meeting of January 15, 2019, and this is as submitted. A motion approving disbursements represented by accounts payable checks numbered 94324 through 94639 totaling $5,112,058.69. Payroll checks numbered 74072 through 74177 totaling $79,064.73, and electronic transfers totaling $1,418,439.63, and a motion to accept contract number 1804 Sidewalks 2018 as complete.
So the council member have an item that went out. You want item number 3 out?
That's the, yeah,
Okay,
sidewalk contract.
okay. Any others? Then consent. Pardon?
I do have a question regarding the minutes real quick.
Okay, sure.
I'm not sure if it needs to be noted, in the minutes it said I had arrived at 7:39, and if there needs to be reasoning with that.
No.
Okay. All right, that's it.
Okay. So consent agenda item consists of items 1 and 2. Do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Moving second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed with that? Item number 3.
Just a quick question, Kevin. You've got a comment here that there was a small section of sidewalk in Barclay Estate Subdivision 2 that was included in the project and that we're holding on a security there.
Right.
Can you update me on that?
Yeah, I'll double check with finance, but I believe we've cut that loose, but I'll confirm that tomorrow.
Cut that loose, meaning that the
Returned
developer
it.
has paid it?
It was paid by the property owner when this house was sold previously.
Okay. So this is the small section that was up at the top of Barclay
Correct.
Ridge Drive? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, just wanted to double check on that.
Then we can make a motion. on
I
it.
shall move to adopt the contract 18-4 sidewalk 18.
Moving second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? With that, we now move to the regular agenda. First up is an ordinance. After we have a nice discussion about this, the last time we met, vacating a portion of Polaris Place near 1425 Northwest Oregon Drive. And with that, Kevin Gardis.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, council. A petition for vacation of a portion of Polaris Place has been submitted to the city. On June 27, 2018, the Planning Commission determined that the proposed vacation was consistent with the comprehensive plan with 2 conditions related to retaining a utility and pedestrian easement. On August 28, 2018, a public hearing was held to consider the vacation petition. The public hearing was closed and the matter tabled and sent back to staff to obtain a survey of the property to determine the location of an existing city water line and an informal path, as well as to prepare a cost estimate to build a safer formal path with public access. On January 15, 2019, staff presented the requested information to council via a discussion item. At the conclusion of that discussion, council directed staff to prepare a vacation ordinance and to include retention of a 10-foot utility easement only. The ordinance has been prepared and is before you tonight. It is our recommendation that council act on the vacation ordinance, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions or comments after your discussion? Seeing none, do I hear a motion on this ordinance?
Move to adopt ordinance 19-2.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Laura?
Ordinance number 19-2, an ordinance of the City of Pullman, County of Whitman, Washington, vacating a portion of Polaris Place near 1425 Northwest Orion Drive.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Our second item tonight on the regular agenda is a resolution accepting a bid from Motley & Motley for the autumn-summer water line and street improvements. Again, Kevin.
Thank you, Mayor. The scope of contract 18-03, autumn-summer water line and street improvements, provides for new water lines, sanitary sewer, and storm drain upgrades, and street resurfacing in autumn and summer streets on Sunnyside Hill. Engineering staff periodically review the location of water main breaks in Pullman, and the summer Autumn Street area had 3 breaks over a 10-year period. The existing pipe to be replaced is cast iron, which is typical of older sections of the distribution system and more subject to breaks. As part of the project, engineering staff evaluated existing sanitary and storm drain and determined needed upgrades. The street will also be resurfaced in the area of the utility work. 3 bids were received on January 22nd. The low bidder was Motley at $450,128.35, which is under the engineer's estimate of $517,578.05. A copy of the bid summary is included in your council packet. Project funding is from the water and sewer maintenance budgets of the utility fund, street fund, and stormwater fund. Construction is scheduled for completion by September 14th. Staff is recommending award to Motley Inc., and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Question, Al.
Just a couple. I see that I need to get my computer out so that I can make the numbers bigger.
It was a challenge to fit it on.
Just real quick, I mean, so a couple of questions. When we do our estimate, are the contractors that are doing the bidding privy to our number to start with?
I think we typically put out what our numbers
is?
are, yep.
Okay. And then, I noticed that the Motley is, 67,000 less than our estimate. Can you just, and in trying to read this, highlight where, and maybe explain to me as I ask you about this a lot, how we differ?
Yeah, so essentially when contractors put a bid together, we're basing it on an average of what we've seen over the last 3 years based on other bids. But contractors kind of make their soup or their recipe how they want to. And sometimes contractors will put a little bit more in some bid items than others. So if you compare one contractor to another in certain bid items, sometimes they're pretty different. But it's kind of a strategy different contractors use to weight unit price items. So we typically go with an average of what we've seen. And we benefit from being a little bit early in the construction season when we bid this project, and so I think we're seeing an aggressive kind of a good early season bid here.
Okay. Go ahead.
If you have specific questions about
No, I just, I find it interesting on how this whole thing works, and here's where I'm going with this too. So now they're coming with this bid that's lower. Are we going to get a change order later for 60,000 or 75,000 or whatever it might be?
Yeah, so typically with this type of a contract, it's a unit price contract. Most of the line items are unit prices, so we actually go out and measure it in the field. So if it's 8-inch C900 water line, we actually physically measure it. So there's no way it grows or shrinks unless the quantity grows or shrinks based on what we actually put in the field. So these contracts are less likely to see change orders than some of the other ones.
It's good news. And then one final question on my side. So we're going to have them done by September 14th. Is there anything in the contract that penalizes them for not finishing on time?
Yes, we have liquidated damages clauses in all our contracts.
Okay.
Other questions?
I just have a quick question. So Kevin, this probably doesn't matter if it's an older section of town, but I know this was something that had come up. If we go back in and make street improvements, I mean, do any of our community partners that we work with have any reason to go in next year and start tearing anything out to fix anything, even if it's at their own cost, and
You mean such as?
Such as a Vista.
Yeah, so we typically coordinate with them, let them know what projects we're working on in advance, so they have a chance to get in there and do things ahead of time. The thing that, sometimes happens is, right across from City Hall, there was a gas meter in a garage, and it was a safety hazard, and they just discovered it and had to dig up a small section of Pine Street over here. So there are unforeseen things that do come up.
Just wondering if it was already torn up.
Right. No, we.
It would be really nice if that could happen. I still remember when Grand Avenue was paved, and it was like within 1 week, some homeowner or somebody along Grand Avenue had a break, and they had to get into the line that we
Right.
just hit, the state had just paved, so, Any other questions or comments? Then do I hear a motion on this
Move to
resolution?
adopt R-7-19.
Second.
Moved and second, Laura.
Resolution number R-7-19, a resolution accepting the bid of Motley Mountain Inc. for autumn summer water line and street improvements and authorizing execution and finishing of contract for said project.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item number 3 is a resolution authorizing investment of the City of Pullman monies into the local government investment pool, which is the interesting pool that we have to stand by for our safety factor. Adam, you can talk. And incidentally, some of you probably recognize Mike Urban, who has accepted a position as our Chief Financial Officer in the future. He's supposed to start sometime in February. It's just nice to see him here, that he can check in with us from time to time. So, but with that,
Thank you, Mayor, council members. So the only reason this is coming before you tonight is to remove the name of someone who no longer is employed by the city and to temporarily put my name at the top of that list. And then it'll come back for you in several weeks so that we can put our new CFO's name on there as well. So this is just to make sure that we have somebody who's on staff who can work with LGIP if need be. There's no reason that's foreseeable that we would need to make any modifications. The one caveat is just making sure that everyone has read the prospectus and made sure that they've looked it over. But again, I don't believe there's going to be any changes that are necessary for our investment at this time.
any further questions on that? Do I hear a motion on this resolution?
Move to adopt.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Read the resolution.
Resolution number R-8-19, a resolution authorizing investment of City of Pullman monies in the local government investment pool.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Go now to a couple of discussion items. Item number 4 is committee assignments. Again, discussion items, so you have a chance to look at the different council things, and Adam, you'll lead the discussion on that.
So again, it's that time of year where we start looking at council assignments for different committees, commissions that the city has. You'll see on the second page of that document that it shows the list that we have as far as who's appointed or how many council members are appointed to the various bodies. And the following memo from our city clerk shows who's currently appointed to the various committees. And I think we were trying to, it's not on here, we were trying to kind of go back and see how long certain members have been on different groups, just to document that. So maybe in an offline session, you can just send me a note with who's been on which committees for this, a rough amount of time, just so we can kind of document that a little bit more easily, since I think a lot of them are from before I even got here. So anyways, there's just a list there, and we'll bring it back forward, I think on the 26th of February, for actually selecting who would be appointed to which the commissions. But wanted to know if we're missing something on this list, or
If you want to move from one committee to another, if you can't make it to, like, for example, a suite of meetings, or somebody else to cover, or whatever, those kinds of things. These are things that we should know about.
I got a quick question. So the airport board,
yes.
Glenn's on there, but then it says something here about an airport board at-large member has to
Right,
be a
that-
council member. I don't see that.
No, it's not a council member. It is the board, the airport board makes the choice, but it's a Pullman representative. And so.
Why does this say star required to be a council member?
That must just be an error on our.
No, it was an error. We had a couple of council members who served on, Barney served on it for a long time, who was a pilot, and then the late,
Jeff Hardacre is currently serving on it.
he served on it for his Schweitzer.
He's retired?
Yeah, he is retired. And so we made an appointment to represent Pullman, a Pullman representative who happens to be the chief pilot for SEL, who's now going on the airport.
Okay, I just was confused.
Yeah, that's an
Get
oversight.
this in here and then nobody was on it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
when
are all the other positions filled? I mean.
On the airport board?
No, on all the rest of the committees that we're
Transportation
supposed
Committee,
to.
I don't think we have anybody on there.
Actually, if I may, Mayor.
Yeah, sure.
So I was placed on the PRTPO, and that's what I had down as notes here. There are some updates that should occur in regards to descriptions, if I may.
Sure.
Yeah,
So Palouse Knowledge Corridor, right now I'm the current co-chair, meets second Friday of each month at 12 p.m. And sometimes it's a 2-hour meeting. Meeting occurs at the airport fire house, so that meeting room there. But that was the major one that I saw on here, so I just wanted to make sure. Yeah.
And solid waste, which I want to stay on, meets at 3:30 in Colfax on that Wednesday.
okay.
Nathan?
Yes, sir.
It was my understanding that PRTPO is no longer meeting in conjunction with SUIDA. Is that accurate?
Yeah, as far as I know, it's separate meetings, yeah. Yeah. Good catch.
And SWIDA is regional, so it doesn't meet the same place all the time. They rotate around.
Yeah.
So again, offline, you can notify Adam if you want to move from one committee, you've done this one year long enough, you want to have some other experiences, let us know that, and then the council can talk it out among.
Mayor, just having done this long enough, I mean, do you have a general recommendation on how many years is too many years, or?
There are some people who enjoy what they're doing, and they become quite an expert. I think Eileen has moved up in that category of solid waste. I think she's probably our biggest expert in that field, in plastics. And I know that you're watching all the legislation going on in Olympia right now, dealing with plastic straws and bags and everything else that's going on.
See, because I'd rather have somebody like that.
Yeah, so would I, yeah. So,
I believe also there was the philosophy, at least earlier, that creating experts in these committees, and I know I've served many, many years on several of these, but, it's of course, I think up to the council if that philosophy.
and we also had some of our new council members that would go on the audit committee, just so they understand all the different bills that we're paying out. And I know, Ann, you've done a fantastic job doing that, so. yeah, so. And Pat has done it in the past, and Pat's been doing well with lodging, and so.
Yeah, and some of the boards, like the left board, it just gets, you can get bogged down in the details of the legislation, so it takes a while to learn all about that.
Can I
Yeah.
ask a question about the library board, your ex officio? So is that just like is there room for someone else to join, or how does that work?
There's only one ex officio
Right.
to that board.
One position for
So,
Oh, that's it? Okay.
And we created that, and Nathan has been our representative on that, when we
to
created that.
create a
it's
better,
relationship between the library and
Okay.
the council and
And
city.
that's paid off.
It's really paid off.
Yeah.
but again, I will say that with newer people on the council, I think it's always valuable for those people to have opportunities where they'd like to serve. So I know one point that I did want to make is the PRTPO. I know I have not had as much time to devote to that. And if other council members feel that they'd like more expertise or more, time in certain.
And the city does pay for mileage for those, especially for the suite and the other one, if you turn in the receipts and things like that. So.
And I would say the same thing for me with PBAC, that the timing of those meetings just somehow didn't work at all. And that's too important a committee not to have, I mean, Kevin is a good city representative, but not to have other involvements. So I respectfully throw that one out there.
Okay, so it's something to think about. Okay, you'll work with that. Okay. All right, and the next item, you have a sheet of paper in front of you for some of the topics that we've discussed with ASWSU in the past. And what we're looking for is for additional topics that will come up for the joint meeting that we have scheduled on Wednesday in February. Okay, Adam?
Yeah, you can see some of the topics that have come up before, and we're just looking for what might be of interest to cover at this upcoming meeting.
I think it would be wise to have another update on code enforcement because of the turnover and the additional emphasis on code enforcement. I'd rather, especially students or those, that ASWC represents to feel like we're looking out for them proactively instead of, after they get dinged or something.
I'd like to get a parking update and how it's worked
How
out
it's
during
working
the
out
during
with
the
the holiday
breaks.
part, yes. Yep.
And how that helped out our crews in terms of cleanup, or did we have to move cars or things like that?
Let's leave transit on there, because I think they've developed some new routes
Right.
and changed some of the timing on that.
And I think there's a new app abilities that they have now
Probably.
too. So, yeah, it's,
Yeah, you're asking the wrong
All right.
person.
I would say, especially with summer coming up, addressing trash and, well, we do have solid waste, but particularly glass on streets. I think a reminder each year about leash laws and responsibility with pets is another one. And I would say homelessness or poverty in the region. The reason I bring this up is mainly because it's important to get out in front of this and have it discussed.
I'm sure ASWSU has been doing a lot of things on food collection and some other things too.
That would be, yeah.
Except for and we have our ASWSU.
Keegan is, there's areas.
Keegan back in the back row, so he's taking notations. Anything else? Yes.
Just a point of clarification, so for that topic, the last topic of poverty and the police, is there a particular person that you have in mind for addressing that, or a certain group that you'd want to invite?
Or do you want to just?
Or, yeah, I mean, are you wanting to? Yeah.
Well, I would definitely want to bring in more experts, someone, Community Action Center, I know Glenn would, that'd be a good one.
And Jennifer from the on-campus food banks, doesn't,
You know what, it would be, I don't think we've done this in ASWSU, but we're doing so much now with Community Action Center and all the dining suites, so we don't waste food, that we're repackaging food. I don't think, we haven't had an ASWSU topic about that, have we, in the past?
Last semester wasn't brought up, at least, that's why we,
Yeah, so maybe that,
it'd be a good.
that would be, so invite the Community Action Center, we have a couple of people that are doing that, which I think is, such a positive for all the dining halls, that they're doing this, and we're salvaging that food, just like we did the Lentil Festival.
I see flyers around campus too for those that have, food.
So we can get, see, there's a couple of people there, Joe or some
yeah,
other people over
and I think
there.
it's on campus, it's Jennifer Murray that
Okay,
does that.
we can get that together. Dan?
And maybe this is a question for Gary about your thoughts on this subject of, the last election, we did have some some legislative items on the ballot for law enforcement training and training around mental health. And with some of our recent history here in Pullman, I think it might be, I know students are engaged on that issue and wanting to know more about it, about what does our local law enforcement do in terms of mental health response and what training do they go through and that type of thing.
And particularly, I know there are a couple of bills that I heard about last week when I was over in Olympia that they're dealing with right now, that you might be able to update both the council and ASWSU on, in terms of that. Okay. Yeah, Ann?
I was going to bring up mental health too, and Keegan, I don't know if that's going to be on your agenda. Do you know yet? Just because there is a community and college partnership task force that's beginning, and it involves Cougar Health and lots of different entities, so.
I can email you, because they meet, why they convene for their meetings tomorrow. It's like if they'll make, like how you're planning right now for the next meeting, theirs is Wednesdays, so
Okay.
tomorrow I can bring that up as a subject.
Okay, thank you.
Do you know if the athletics mental health representatives are included on that?
Yeah, well,
So that's kind of separate from Coop Health.
yes, Casey, yeah, I believe so.
So again, our joint meeting is on February 6th, 6 PM, and it's the Multicultural Center.
Yep, Elson Floyd Multicultural Center.
Fantastic.
Nice.
We've been after that for quite a while. Thank you for making all those arrangements.
I think we planned that in August.
Yes, that's why we knew that would go quick, and so thank you very much for making those
And
arrangements.
the time is
And
different also.
the time
Did you
is-
say 6 PM?
6 PM.
6 PM, okay.
Yeah, 6 PM. And there is parking around there, which is, and there's,
Parking after 5, it's free.
parking after 5 is free in that area. I mean, it is really a win compared to some of the other ones we've had to do in the past. All right, and thank you again for making those arrangements. Anything, from your standpoint, anything that we didn't mention that we should, because you'll send us a list of what your topics are.
I'll have Lindsay or Jacob send it to you, yeah.
Okay,
Like I said, they won't make it until tomorrow's meeting.
okay, we're good then. All right.
Is that usually just an hour? that
Pardon?
meeting? Is that usually just an hour, that meeting?
No, it usually goes from 6 until about 7:30.
That's what I thought.
Yeah. But sometimes they bring food, that slows Brandon up a little bit, so I know, I'm just, but no,
Thank
it's, usually it's at about 7:30, and usually ASWSU has a meeting after our meeting in the past.
Did they have one last semester?
Yeah, well, they kicked us out and then they had a meeting, so I don't know if that's gonna happen this time.
If they had, I'm assuming so. They might, they kind of do like the regular, basically what you said, meeting after.
Okay.
Because your time is valuable as well.
Okay.
So they want to make sure to get the big meeting done first and then they'll
All right,
carry on with things.
thank you. With that, is there any new business to come before the council tonight? Seeing none, you'll see ahead that we will not be meeting on Tuesday, but we'll be meeting on Wednesday next week. We have our joint meeting. And then you can see other meetings that canceled when we were going over the action days with the Association of Washington Cities. And then the other meeting will be February 26th. With that, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Moving second, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.